The European Investment Fund, this is our core business. What we do is invest in various growth enterprises through venture capital managers across the whole of the region. And this is something we've been doing for the last 15 years, and we have a portfolio of nearly €1 billion of investments across this region. But we want to do more, and therefore we put forward two proposals at the moment to encourage a kind of partnership with the governments to increase the level of investment in the growth enterprises across this region.
You mentioned two ones. This is the Baltic one, and there's the Nordic Innovation Fund too that you proposed earlier.
That's right. We've been working on two different proposals through a process of talking to ministries, to agencies, to pension funds and to venture capital managers as to what is the best way to increase the level of private investment in this area. And as a result of that discussion, we've come up with two slightly separate but very similar proposals. One is called the Nordic Innovation Fund for the 5 Nordic countries, and the other one is similarly called the Baltic Innovation Fund with the governments of Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania.
Why two funds and not only one?
Well, in theory it could be one, but when we talk to the pension fund managers and the private investors, they prefer to have two slightly different focuses, geographic focuses, and it makes it a little bit more manageable. And it's truth be known that the regions are slightly different in their maturity, and we need to respect that, particularly from the point of view of the private investors. The Nordic region and the Baltic region, but the Nordic region in particular, has some superb competitive strengths and comparative advantages, such as clean tech and ICT mobile and life sciences, and the private investors are very, very interested in maximizing the potential of those, and I think that's something that the governments and the European Investment Fund should support.
The governments in the Nordics and in the Baltic countries, do they shout hallelujah, or what has happened?
Okay, it's a good question. There is a proper decision process to be made by each country to decide whether to co-invest some money alongside money from the European Investment Fund, alongside private investors' money, to create a critical mass of capital. That capital is then invested via venture capital managers into growth enterprises across the whole of the region. But that has to be a decision process by each and every government. So quite correctly, EIF has put forward proposals, and the governments are considering how to fund the requirement of that proposal in order to make this innovation fund happen.
Why aren't they saying yes right away? Because they need money. Why is that?
Well, of course, public finances are very tight. There's lots of issues going on, and we very much respect the budgetary aspects of that. And so governments have to follow their normal process of decision making. And we're assisting that in every way that we can so that they can come to a natural conclusion. At a recent ministers' meeting of the Nordic Council of Ministers, there was a general positive for the concept of what we're doing, but the decision process has to be respected, and generally the ministers said, let's agree to have our internal decisions finalized by March 2012 in order to allow this process of implementation to go ahead. Now, we believe the Nordic and the Baltic countries are very well positioned through events like this to join together to make this work. Normally, people will operate quite nationally in this respect, which isn't always the way that the venture capital industry does work. Therefore, we're trying to get an extra degree of collaboration across the Nordic region and the Baltic region, which will entice greater levels of private investment in order to have a greater impact and, of course, create greater employment for the future.
And what kind of enterprises do you want to support in the first place?
Well, obviously we're looking at growth enterprises, enterprises that have a good opportunity to grow in the future, to create revenues, to create profits and employment accordingly. Sectors, well, this region is blessed by having comparative and competitive advantages in certain areas which is well respected around the world. So clean tech, so ICT mobile, life sciences, if you go to Norway, the oil and gas exploration, even further to Iceland and their geothermic that's going on there. There's a whole array of sectors where the growth potential is very good. And now it's a question of getting the correct kind of risk financing to build that potential into a reality. And that's the kind of areas that we'll be looking at.